Hi, I'm Jilly G. Welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm going to show you beef jerky. Gluten-free, of course. Some of you know that I got a smoker, and so not today, but tomorrow I'm going to smoke some beef jerky. And I've been doing a lot of research on recipes, and I've made beef jerky before, but it was with deer, and it was a really long time ago, and I did it in the oven. And if I remember, I think all I did was just salt and pepper, because I didn't know what I was doing. But it turned out okay. It was all right for a first time. But I've never smoked any jerky before. I'm just going to do some basic flavors for my first run of beef jerky. I've got 2 teaspoons of onion flakes and 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, about 2 teaspoons of pepper, and about 1/2 teaspoon of cayenne pepper, 3 tablespoons of gluten-free soy sauce, or I've mentioned this before, it's a liquid amino that I use in place of soy sauce. And then about 1/2 cup of honey. And I'm not using any salt because this liquid amino is really salty. And then I've got about 7 pounds of meat. And I went to the butcher, and these are really big pieces. But it's okay that they're really big pieces. I don't have any jerky racks for my smoker, so I'm just gonna be laying them on the grill. And if they don't all fit, I was actually going to attempt some in the oven too. So we might get both versions. And I've got just 2 plastic bags here. I'm just going to eyeball half of the meat in each one and half of my seasonings. Because I've already touched the meat, I'm going to put the meat in here first. And the butcher sliced it really thin for me. And I might end up making some more of my sauce. We'll see. But I think it will be enough. And it looks about half and half. And then I'm just going to very carefully mix all this in with my honey. If you have a favorite jerky recipe, share it. I'm always open for new recipes. But one thing I noticed is there seems to be 2 different ways of doing a marinade or a dry rub, which I figure mine is a little bit of in between. A lot of people use brown sugar and soy sauce, and it also just seems to be whatever your favorite flavors are. And you could go a little spicier or a little sweeter. And partly why I'm using plastic bags is I want to be able to flip them over periodically and squish them. Make sure that marinade is getting all over the meat. I'm just going to eyeball about half. You might be saying this is kind of a lot of meat to experiment on, but these are all flavors that I really like. And I was talking to the butcher, and he made a comment that sometimes people tend to overdo it with their flavorings. And so less is more. So I figured I'd start out with less. And if you didn't want this to marinate overnight, if you have a food saver or a vacuum sealer, you could vacuum seal your meat and your marinade for a shorter period of time. And I really didn't think that would be enough, but it seems like it's gonna be. Even though they're in bags, sometimes you never know if they might spring a leak. So I'm gonna stick this in the fridge. It will go overnight. It'll probably go for about maybe 15 hours, depending on what time I go out and start the smoker. So my meat has been marinating for about 16 hours. And I decided I'm going to cut my strips of meat at least in half because they're really big. They smell really oniony and garlicky. All my meat is cut in half. They're really big pieces, so I think they'll probably take a little bit longer to smoke. But I've got my smoker heated up and it's ready to go. It's at 180. And I've got some olive oil that I'm going to brush on the racks just to help a little bit. And I've lined the tray in the bottom with foil for easy cleanup. And I don't think all of this will fit on the smoker at one time. So I may or may not put some in the oven or my dehydrator. definitely have to do more than one batch. As you saw, not all of that will fit on my grill. So I've preheated my oven to the same temperature, which is 180. If you're doing this in the oven, you might want to add some liquid smoke or something like that to your jerky. But let's try this a little bit in the oven, and then I'm actually going to put some in my dehydrator too. And I'm pretty sure they won't all finish at the same time, but that's fine. So I've lined a cookie sheet with foil, and then I have a rack here, which I won't be able to fit very many on this one. So I think I should do 2. And I'm just gonna brush these a little bit with olive oil before I put the meat on as well. And I don't mind if these are hanging over the edge a little bit. But I want them fairly close together, but not overlapping. So I cut some of this meat into pretty small pieces. And I've lined the bottom tray of my dehydrator with foil. Just, my fan is at the bottom, and with all of this dripping, I want it to have an easy cleanup as well. But I cut these into smaller pieces just so hopefully they go a little bit quicker as well, and so I can fit them a little easier in the dehydrator. And again, these ones won't have the smoke flavor that the smoked ones will. And I expect some of these to cook a lot quicker, or dehydrate a lot quicker than others, which means we can taste it sooner. So my first time making beef jerky, we're going to try all the ways to make beef jerky. And this is just a basic dehydrator. I'm going to put it at as high as it will go. For the temperature on this is 158. So my oven and the smoker are at 180. And then this, for the time, I'll set it for 10 hours, but I'm sure I'll check it before. And they are smaller pieces, so we'll see how long this takes. I have no idea, but we'll find out. And I think in the smoker it's only going to take about 4 hours, and then we'll see in the oven. I think it will take a little bit longer in the oven as well. So my beef jerky outside I think is almost done. There's a couple of spots that are still a little bit squishy, but it's coming along. And it's been going for about 4.5 hours in the smoker. I feel like right now it's just essentially kind of dried roast beef. And it smells like dried roast beef. So the oven needs a lot longer. And I'm tempted to turn up the temperature, but I don't know. I feel like it just needs to go low and slow. And then in the dehydrator, I rotated the trays once. And this bottom tray is closer to the heat source, but I wanted to turn it over so all sides get dehydrated. And I don't know if you have a dehydrator, but I always rotate my trays and usually put what was on top on the bottom, except I'm keeping the foil on the bottom. I expected it to be a lot messier than what it's turning out to be, but those are not ready yet either. But I'd like to give you a side-by-side comparison when they're all done. These are really big pieces, but they look really good. I don't know if you can see. Pretty bendy. Some of my pieces stuck to my grate, even though I brushed it with olive oil. But really, So the texture is really good, depending on what kind of beef jerky you like. If you like it a little crispier or a little chewier, I'm really happy with mine. It's a really good mix. That was about 4.5 hours that this much meat went. I was concerned that they would take a little bit longer because they are so big, but I'm really happy with them. As for my flavorings, I will say it wasn't enough for the amount of meat that I had. I think one of the biggest things that it's missing is a salt component, which with that liquid aminos that I use in other recipes, if you use too much, it's really salty. But again, using the quantities of meat, but it is really good. And maybe once it cools down, flavors will come out a little bit more. That piece had some pepper. But all in all, really good. As soon as my other 2 batches are done, we'll see what those are like. I've been rotating my trays because some of this meat is cooking faster than others, or dehydrating faster than others. But it's coming along. And my roast beef jerky, it's coming along. It's getting drier and looking less like roast beef. So those are coming along, taking a lot longer than what I expected in the oven. And the dehydrator is actually going faster than what I expected. But what I'm going to do is make up a small amount of the marinade that I had used and brush that on the jerky that's in the oven and see if I can get a little more flavor out of it. And then I can use my same brush that I had used for the olive oil. But here's some honey, liquid aminos, onion flakes, garlic powder, cayenne pepper, and freshly ground black pepper. I think that was everything. And I'm just giving this a good stir. And even though I just took everything out of the oven and flipped it all over, I think I'm going to brush this on. It really does smell like roast beef. And I'm going to flip them back over and get both sides with this marinade. Or now it's a sauce. I hope my dehydrator isn't too loud and that you can still hear me talking. This oven beef jerky seems to be messier than the smoker or the dehydrator beef jerky. I expected a lot bigger mess. And I think these are just about finished. But I want them to go back in the oven. And I think my oven beef jerky is finally done. We'll see what it's like with that extra glaze. It's really good. My dehydrated jerky is not ready yet, but I brushed some glaze on this top rack too, just to see what will happen. I didn't put any extra glaze on here because I don't even know if it's a glaze. It's kind of a glaze, the marinade mixture. But I didn't put any on the smoked version because I want to be able to package that up and have it last a little bit longer. I think the softer it is, it doesn't last as long. Although the way I've been eating it, it's not going to last long anyways. It's really good. But definitely needs more flavor for at least for this batch. And I think for the amount of marinade that I used in the beginning, I think it would be really good for maybe 2 to 3 pounds of meat. But not the 7-ish pounds that I used. But I like that I was able to just make some extra and brush it on. I think that will add a lot of extra flavor. And maybe a little bit of extra cayenne pepper for some kick. But it's really good. We'll see what this one tastes like when it's finished. So I was able to pull out some beef jerky and condense down what's left. Some of those are still a little bit too soft, but these ones are looking really good. And it tastes the same, because they're all the same. It's been really interesting making beef jerky, all of the same recipe in 3 different ways. And these are still pretty soft. I will say, next time, I will not do such a large batch, all the same flavor. But they're really good. I'm really happy with my results, and so much of it was an experiment that you got to see too. But I've learned a lot today, and hopefully you have too. I've learned I really think I like a sweeter beef jerky. Maybe more of a teriyaki flavor, which I think I would do next time. But this one is actually really good. I have a lot of beef jerky to eat. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.